بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Welcome to Ramadan Transformation, session number 5. In today's session, we're going to explore why an understanding of this inside-out paradigm is so important if your objective is to master the Nafs. And most importantly, we're going to address what the heck is this thing called the Nafs? You know, it comes up so often in Islamic literature. The Quran talks about it. It's mentioned in the Sunnah. There are some hadith that talk about it. Spiritual scholars base a lot of their work on this thing. What is it? What is the Nafs? And the reason I'm going to first address the question, what is the Nafs, is because the term is used in different ways throughout different writings. So I actually had a scholar, I was having a conversation with a talibul ilm, I guess. I don't know if he's a full-on scholar yet, but he's a pretty knowledgeable dude. And he's studying and he's learning Arabic and he lives in Egypt and he's getting tuition from an Azhar scholar. And we were having this conversation and he asked some really, really brilliant questions. And when he found out that I do Quran coaching, and one of the things he said is, you know, let me ask you something about the Nafs. He said, if you read Muhammad Iqbal, he talks about in Asrar al-Khudi, and that's he talks about al-Khudi, which is the self. And Muhammad Iqbal really talked about the full expression of the self, like becoming all of who you really are, fulfilling this innate potential that Allah has given you. And he talks about the nafs like you want to become the best you can be, right? And he's talking about it from that perspective. And when he talks about the nafs, it's actually in a really positive light. And then he said, but there's this other, you know, if you read a lot of Sufi literature, they talk about destroying the nafs. Oh, you know, the nafs is really bad. It's this thing that's inside of you and you have to fight it and you do jihad an nafs. And jihad's another word we're going to come back to. You know, you have to fight against the nafs. So he's like, you got any, like, he was just asking, like, what's your perspective with this whole psychology and Quran coaching and all this stuff you're going on about? What's your perspective on it? My perspective is really simple. I mean, they're both using the same word, but they're giving it totally different meanings. Traditionally, the word nafs has had two meanings. One is the station of self that you've reached. So there are kind of 7 stations of the nafs that are mentioned in the Quran. And kind of there are lower stations where you're completely disconnected from Allah and you're in suffering, basically. And then there's the highest station, which some people say only the prophets can reach, where you're basically you're enlightened. And then there's different levels in between. And, you know, the spiritual objective, if there is an objective, is to obviously be up there and not down there. Now, I have a different objective for you, and I have a different criteria for you, and I have a different way of defining the nafs. Okay, so let me just clarify. So one definition of the nafs is the station that you've reached. Another definition of the nafs is the lower part of the self, and then the ruh is the higher part of the self, like the kind of divine part of you. And so the people that are talking about destroying the nafs and getting rid of the nafs, they mean destroying the lower self and coming more from your higher self. So that's what Islamic spiritual scholars have been talking about. Now I want to explore what the nafs really is, that can help in a way that might help you to understand yourself a lot better, and that can help you have a criteria. What I really want for you is this criteria so you know if you're coming from, so that you know if you're coming from the higher self or the lower self. There is a criteria, and it's clear cut. And if you don't know it, you can be pointing in the wrong direction, having all this positive thinking, but not realizing it's all coming from ego. Or you can be pointing in the wrong direction and be totally depressed. So let me tell you the criteria to know if you're coming from nafs or if you're not coming from nafs. The criteria is, we know in reality, thought and feeling are inseparable. They're two sides of the same coin. However, you have such a powerful imagination, you can create the illusion of separation. You can use your imagination to separate thought from feeling and believe that I'm stressed out because of all the work I've got to do. Not I'm stressed out because I'm having stressful thinking. or I'm upset because of what my husband said to me or what my wife said to me, right? So you now all of a sudden you're thinking what they said is what's causing your upset, which is a very simple thing to believe. It just so happens that it's just not true. The moment you create a separation, an illusion of separation between thought and feeling, it doesn't really work that way, right? That's like accidentally believing the sun is going around the earth. It doesn't really work that way. But the moment you create that, you'll then, all of the thoughts that you have, that separation that you create is the space within which the nafs operates. The moment you do this, you're not coming from nafs anymore. You'll automatically be present. Okay, I think that's it for today. May the peace, love, and blessings of Allah be with you. Tune in for the tomorrow's session where we'll go more deeply into the idea of self-correction and the idea of how you can master your nafs.